status quo. We gonna buck the status quo. Oh, bucking the status quo. We gonna buck the status quo. Bucking the status quo. We gonna buck the status quo. Oh, bucking the status quo. We gonna buck the status quo. Bucking the status quo. We gonna buck the status quo. Oh, bucking the status quo. We gonna buck the status quo. The foundation leads the fight. The warriors lead the tribe. When the beat drops and the spirits rise, we find the truth behind the disguise. They want us to go away, only our hearts do we obey. The foundation leads the fight. The warriors lead the tribe. When the beat drops and the spirits rise, we find the truth behind the disguise. They want us to go away, only our hearts do we obey. No ranks, no chains, just unity. One tribe, one light, one destiny. No ranks, no chains, just unity. One tribe, one light, one destiny. Bucking the status quo. We gonna buck the status quo. Oh, bucking the status quo. We gonna buck the status quo. Bucking the status quo. We gonna buck the status quo. Oh, bucking the status quo. We gonna buck the status quo. No ranks, no chains, just unity. One tribe, one light, one destiny. No ranks, no chains, just unity. One tribe, one light, one destiny. Bucking the status quo. We gonna buck the status quo. Oh, bucking the status quo. We gonna buck the status quo. Bucking the status quo. We gonna buck the status quo. Oh, bucking the status quo. We gonna buck the status quo.
Check. All right. Hey, welcome back to the Irreverent Warriors and Grunt Style Foundation podcast live stream. Here we are on another beautiful Friday. There's a lot of snow on the ground, but we have dug our way out here in St. Louis, Missouri, and I hope the rest of the country has as well. I am joined, as always, by Will Wisner, Executive Director of the Grunt Style Foundation, and we have a special guest today, Dr. Larry Shapiro from Washington University, a clinical psychologist who has worked extensively with first responders and combat vets. And so first, I just want to remind everybody, if you would like to jump in our comments, if you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. Just jump on Facebook, type those comments in, and that'd be fantastic. We are looking forward to interacting with you and being able to take some of what you'd like to hear about and put it right into the episode, into the agenda today. And so I'll flip it over to Will. What's going on? What's new in the Grunt Style Foundation world? I know you've been working on this platform to try to get more kind of training and education out to the veteran population. Tell us what you're working on.
We are working on a couple of big initiatives right now. Number one, of course, the Circle platform is what you're talking about. That's going to be an online kind of landing page where we're going to have separate communities. We'll have one for the Reverend Warriors in there. We'll have one for the harmed community that's dealing with issues on overprescription from psychotropics. Then we're going to have our integration initiative is going to live there. So what can you do there? Well, you can take classes there. You can watch podcasts there. You can participate in group events. If you want to host your own event, you can live stream yourself on the platform. And hopefully, if you're wanting to do a get together for peer support or whatever you want to imagine, you can do that there on that platform. And then the second thing that we have going on, pardon me, that I'm very excited for, probably more than anything, and this grew out of our emergency response work that we did during Hurricane Helene and then down in Texas last year, down in Kerrville with the floods. We are now working with the state of Texas on standing up CERT teams, which is a community emergency response team. So we are providing training, and we're getting credentialed to conduct the training ourselves. And if you're a Reverend Warrior or a veteran that wants to work with us as Reverend Warriors to come in and get that CERT certification, we want to have you. And once you're trained up, you'll be an asset for your local community and their emergency and disaster response efforts there in your town. And so 2026 is going to be our pilot. And we're going to get all these things stood up and kind of the bugs worked out of that. And this is a joint collaboration between the VFW and Irreverent Warriors right now.
Great.
But as it grows, you'll be able to hopefully, if your church in your town wants to stand up a platoon and have their own element that is trained in working in that manner, you'll be able to do that. So hopefully there'll be a whole bunch of platoons that come to every town across the United States, and that will hopefully give a new way of looking at veteran organizations. Right now, people think about the VFW and, it's this old smoky bar and I don't really want to go there and all that kind of stuff. But where I think we can go with this is, the veteran community has a lot to offer. And so that's kind of what we're wanting to do and kind of redefine how people think of the veterans in their community.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I'd love to change about the way veterans are perceived is there's a lot of thought that, oh, you're a veteran, oh, you're kind of a victim. You've kind of you are traumatized and underserved, and you know what I mean. That kind of
exactly.
That kind of. I get a lot of sympathy like that, which comes from a good place inside of people. But it'd be fantastic if the veteran community was known as disaster response. We do
a good job at that, man.
Yeah, that the veterans stand up when there's a national disaster, and they go and they, you know what I mean. That would be a great a place for them to fit in.
Oh yeah, and that's where. On that issue, that's where Irreverent Warriors down in San Antonio and Matt Scally and his team have so much to be proud of. We really, the Knoxville team out last year with Hurricane Helene out in the Appalachians, they did awesome. When we built that plan based on what we learned up there in Appalachia. Yeah. And so in Texas, we were on the ground and distributing tons of relief supplies in under 48 hours. We didn't have government officials. There was no FEMA. There was none of the organizations that's what they do is they come in disaster response. It was purely Irreverent Warriors working with the VFW posts, standing up, taking initiative, and moving goods from point A to point B and getting that stuff up and running while the clock was ticking, because there was a lot of people swept away. You remember there was that Girl Scout camp that got swept away with all those little kids.
Yeah.
So it was, time was of the essence. And we were able to activate in ways that other groups weren't. And a lot of people don't know this, but we actually received a presidential commendation from President Trump for that effort, which is what has paved the way for this new CERT initiative to stand up. So we're very excited about it.
And that's that training starts in Texas February 20th, right?
February 20th, we're going to be putting out some details on how you can sign up. So if you're an irreverent warrior or a veteran, you're down in Texas and you want to participate in that, stay tuned to our social media page here at Grunt Style Foundation or over at Irreverent Warriors, and we'll start making that available. Right now, we're working the bugs out from the way you signed up because it's a government page, and so it's Chinese algebra, man. It's hard to decipher of what it is you're looking at.
Got it. Well, awesome. I mean, I don't want to waste any more time. We've got Dr. Shapiro here from WashU, renowned clinical psychologist, and I wanted to hand it over to you to go ahead and introduce him, and let's jump into his background and what he has to share.
For sure. So, hi, Dr. Larry. Thanks for joining us, man. For everybody watching, this is our good friend, Dr. Larry Shapiro. This is a guy who has my heart, man. You are, and I have a history, and I'm on record of not being a big fan of most things in that world of psychology until I met people like you. And you really changed my way of thinking on what all is possible there. And the way your approach and how you handle this, I think is to be commended. And I want to bring as much attention to you and your work of what you are doing and hopefully inspire those of your peers and colleagues across the country to maybe take some cues from you. So welcome to our show, man. And I would love for you to tell our audience a little bit about you and your background, and then we'll get into the nature of your work and how you see things.
Sure. Thanks again for the compliments. It always makes me a little bit uncomfortable. You know, say something like that. So, all right. So I am a clinical psychologist. I got my degree back in 1990. Studied in Berkeley, California, not at UC Berkeley, but California School of Professional Psychology. I ended up coming to St. Louis to do a postdoctoral fellowship at SLU when they had a kind of an independent, it was really interesting, independent psychiatric floor run by psychologists.
Now, is that unusual?
It was unusual because psych floors are run by psychiatrists, by MDs, where the primary modality is medication.
Yeah.
The top floor, it was run by psychologists and nurses. And so we would get people from all over the country, really, really severe, intractable problems like obsessive compulsive disorder, agoraphobia, eating disorders. It was also at a time when someone could come into the hospital for 90 days, no questions asked.
Wow.
So we could really do some great work, really behavioral, because the medications for most of these people wasn't working. So then from there, I did a stint at WashU in the Department of Psychiatry, primarily focusing on helping them develop programs for treating obsessive compulsive disorder, panic disorder, social anxiety disorder. Short time in private practice. And then I actually had a career shift. Because at the time, back in the day, managed care, not like it is today, would say, you got 10 sessions, Shapiro, to fix this person's problem. 10 sessions. So, and eventually, you start doing that. I was like, well, this external force is controlling how I'm doing therapy.
What was the drive for that? What was the motivation?
Money.
Just money? Like
money. Here's 10 sessions. We're going to pay you X amount for 10 sessions. Get them better or don't. Or every 10 sessions, you're going to have to reapply for more. And so I developed this mentality. It's like, okay, you come in the first session, you got one session to complain about your problem. If you do nothing to fix it, you lose the right to complain. And eventually I was like, well, I guess I've lost the right to complain because I've been complaining about insurance for a long time. So I left psychology for a while, went into finance, where I really focused on decision-making, the psychology of why people make the decisions they make regarding their investments. Over time, though, I was like, okay, I'm helping people with money make more money. And finding it was getting harder to get out of bed. Leaving work early, getting there late, taking longer lunches, like this is, and I didn't know what to do. And then it occurred to me, it's like, well, I've got training in PTSD from my time, at SLU. I'm a guy. I'm assuming the guys who are in combat would prefer to talk to a guy than a woman. I'm just making an assumption at that point.
Depends on the woman.
Right. It depends on the woman, right? But so I called up my old supervisors back at SLU and say, hey, I'm thinking about coming back. He opened the door for me. And this is what I want to do. I want to work with combat veterans. And they said, well, I'd love to have you back. So I went back, got some specialized training in combat trauma, military psychology. And then basically just said, all right, start sending me people. And that's really where I started really learning about combat trauma and PTSD is, a lot of times you learn a lot in school, but a lot of it you never use once you leave.
Sure.
So I started learning more. What's this experience? What is going on here? I learned about this stuff. What are these guys telling me? And so I started developing a different way of thinking about PTSD in general, but combat specifically. So one of the first things is, so this is 2010, 2011. So most of the guys that I'm seeing are coming in, they're in their early 30s. Maybe one veteran I saw. You get discharged at 22, 23. You don't see them until they're in their 30s, right? Because now they're young, but now they've maybe not been able to get a job, or they've lost a couple of jobs. They've been through one or two spouses or girlfriends. Maybe they've got a kid now in their 30s. Their parents are saying, what's wrong with you?
There's a pattern emerging.
There's a pattern. So it was really only until they're like in their early to mid 30s that guys started coming in, not in their 20s.
Well, you got to have that time. At least this was my experience. You got to have time to really screw things up. And get to that point where you realize you're screwed up, and it's time to go look for the help.
And regardless of the problem, the 20s is when you're supposed to be messing up.
Right.
That's that period. But in this case, there's a level of maturity. Remember, these guys are just coming out of high school, and then go right into the military. So they've also got to learn. And I'd say they had to integrate. I don't even say reintegrate, because they never had an opportunity to find out how to be an adult.
That's right.
So I don't say we're going to help you reintegrate. It's like, no, you've had training wheels on. We got to integrate you into society as an adult. So in the 30s, they're coming in and started hearing all of these complaints. Why are you coming to see me? The VA will see you for nothing. And then I started hearing, and you know who actually was the most impactful in terms of my thinking about working with veterans? The veteran spouses.
Yeah, I can see that.
What did you hear?
They were coming in pissed. The guys would sit, hands folded, arms folded, legs folded, crumpled up. The wives are leaning forward in my face. What are you going to do for my husband? Shoot, just met you. Why are you so angry with me? Not angry with me, but just so angry that they've been trying to walk their spouse through the system and get stymied and bullied, blown off, disrespected.
Wow.
And it was the spouses that actually were like the ones that made me like, oh, I'm being yelled at. It doesn't happen a lot when you're a psychologist. You're usually pretty quiet.
And you're saying that's frustration at the VA?
At the VA. They're not frustrated with their spouse, at least not yet. Or they're frustrated with their spouse, but they're more frustrated with the VA and the mistreatment and the disrespect from the VA. And the problems that they're having, and saying, clearly my husband's got a problem here. Why can't he get benefits? We put in for PTSD and they keep denying. So it's the treatment part, but also how are you going to get a claim in? And constant being rejected for claims for PTSD. So I'm learning all this basically from people saying this is a problem. The other thing I learned is guys coming in with polypharmacy, right? Guys coming in on 10, 12, 15, 18 medications. Now, I'd never seen that before, and you don't learn about that in graduate school.
Well, we joke around in the veteran community that we're the lab rats. We're the lab rats of the pharmaceutical industry with the psychiatric medications.
Well, we're certainly the gravy train. That's certainly true.
So so I'm looking here and I'm like, I don't even know what I'm treating. You're coming in on all these medications. Am I treating a side effect?
Right.
Am I treating a combination? What's underneath all of this garbage? Not only is it polypharmacy, but polydiagnosis. So guys would come in with, and they would rattle it off. I've been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, intermittent explosive disorder, borderline personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, major depression, other things. But the one thing that they were never diagnosed with, PTSD.
That's the one that comes along with the benefit
Well,
that they
and
don't want
this
to
is-
pay.
But this is also why I don't know if it was about the pay. I think it was just a general misunderstanding, lack of understanding of the people who are doing the assessments.
So that raises a good question. I mean, and I'm very interested to hear your answer. What is it that's so special about Dr. Larry Shapiro that you could look at this situation over a relatively short amount of time and put your finger exactly on the nature of the problem? Where here currently, even if we remove everything that there's in the history of the VA prior to 2001, and then over the course of that 20-year war, and then the time here to where we are here in 2026, all these mental health care professionals across country working inside the VA don't see that. Am I to believe that they don't see the same things that you see, or is that the powers that be that, like, you were limited to 10 visits? Is it more like that kind of a mechanic? The bureaucracy is getting involved.
When I think about it, whenever I see anybody, regardless of what they're coming in for, my first thought is, how am I going to get this person better? So if you start from the point of what's the goal? What's getting better? Well, so for me, for working with veterans, go anywhere you want, whenever you want, comfortably. Pretty practical.
Mm-hmm.
Hang out in your house, leave the blinds open. Go to the supermarket, shop, don't rush. Take your kids to the mall. Don't worry about, pie in the area in front of them. Just have a good time. Go to a movie. Practical. So if you say, well, what's that goal? Then you look at what's going on here and say, well, first of all, this is a freaking mess. And for me as a psychologist, like when I was in graduate school, the primary modality that was taught was psychodynamic psychotherapy, id, ego, superego, some Jungian concepts, some other psychodynamic. And in graduate school, I was like, what the hell are you talking about? What do you mean someone's going to have to be in therapy for 10 years? Who wants to do that? That doesn't sound very practical. So for me, it had more to do with the underlying philosophy of people I'm doing this to get people better. I don't want to stand around here for 10 years, waiting for some kind of magical insight that's going to make somebody feel better. To me, it intrinsically, even in graduate school, made no sense.
So is there just a belief or an understanding or an acceptance that the tools and modalities within that type of treatment just take that long? Or what's the thinking there?
Well, at that time, and I was in graduate school in the Bay Area starting in 1985. It was also happened to be right at the peak of the AIDS epidemic. So I got an also on-the-ground experience working with that kind of trauma, and losing friends. Boom, you were diagnosed, and they're gone. So I think it was just when everybody's got their own echo chamber, and if you go into it expecting that any kind of psychological growth is going to take forever, based on Freud's work. Mm-hmm. Right. So now we're talking about a modality that was started in the turn of the last century, right? After World War I, during and after World War I. So we're talking about, think about technology, the technological growth since the turn of the last century, but this is not growing at the same rate as other technologies.
Is it possible? So what's come to me, and have you seen the Netflix show that came out recently with the Ibogaine?
In Waves and War?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you'd mentioned that to me. What comes to me when I'm watching that movie, and that movie has done the best job I've seen of really showing how veterans can interact with plants and get massive benefit from it, right? And when I watch that, what I think is it possible that you could do 50 years of talk therapy, but there's something in the subconscious that's not allowing the deeper pain to come forward? But then there's these plants somehow that can almost, maybe over the course of 30 years of talk therapy, you could get to that subconscious somehow through different methods. And it feels like some of these plants sometimes can help. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So the basic premise is in psychodynamic psychotherapy that at some point you'll have this insight that will cure whatever the problem
The
is.
belief changes and
that there's some kind of unconscious conflict that if we can uncover it in therapy, boom, you'll get better. So, but from a practical perspective, then it's like people don't want. I mean, these again, the wives are coming in saying, "We've been at this now 5, 7, 10 years. What are you going to do? Why should I trust you that you're not the same as all these other people who've just screwed us over?" So, Will, to back to your question, it really had more to do with a mindset of saying, what's practical? Because a lot of times the best solution is usually the simplest. Right? Oh, like, you have 5 diagnoses, but what I'm hearing is this guy's got PTSD and all these, and the thing about PTSD that people don't realize is the symptoms, the 20 symptoms of PTSD have so much overlap with so many other problems.
Absolutely.
So that's why when I'm like, well, what's the lowest common denominator? Combat. That was the lowest common, the most common denominator. They've all been in combat or served in some kind of combat support role.
Yeah.
That's the lowest common denominator. So why would I not think PTSD as my first, most obvious thought about what's going on with this person? Why would I think they have bipolar disorder? Why would I go there if I know they've experienced trauma? So it really is that simple. It's not magic. I'm not that brilliant. It was just...
Well, it's just the obvious, but it's just so frustrating. That's just like, I feel like that's common sense to a large degree. I mean, maybe if you're not skilled with all the education and knowledge that you've trained on over the years, but at some point, if you have that level of training, which presumably everyone in the other health arenas there do, that should be obvious. And I also love, Larry, what you said about the multiple layers of overlap. And what I'd like to add to that is, we did a lot of work through the 2013 through up to 2022. And we got the PACT Act passed, where I was dealing with people that were chronic or terminally ill as results of toxic exposures and traumatic brain injuries. And there's so many symptoms. If you have a lesion on your brain, a chemical lesion on your brain from a burn pit, it's going to impact a certain area of your brain, and you're going to manifest symptoms that look just like some kind of a mental health issue. And so we start treating it with pharmaceuticals when in fact it's a physiological damage. And so I always wondered for the longest time, and maybe you can shed some insight on your opinion on that. I always wonder how many people that are coming in seeking mental health help for anxiety, depression, PTSD, all these things, when they actually have a physical injury. And do you guys take that into account and explore that?
Well, I do. So
I know mine don't.
Right. So, someone comes in and I know that they've got a history in the military. It's like, okay, did you deploy? What was your job? What did you do? Marine infantry?
Radio operator. Yeah.
Radio operator?
Yep.
Radio operator. Oh,
Yep.
You're a target.
Mm-hmm.
You were walking around with a bullseye on your back.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now I know. I got to keep in mind, this guy was walking around for however long with a target on his back. How many times were you exposed to high caliber weapons? And here's the other thing that also, struck me is like a helicopter pilot, Apache, saying, whenever I fired my guns, when I stopped, my eyes would keep moving. I was like, holy cow, you probably got a TBI.
Exactly.
From just firing high caliber weapons. Did anybody ever assess you for that? And so it was like, wait a minute, why are people not actually understanding or thinking about you don't have to be knocked unconscious, but the shock wave from a high caliber weapon is going to create micro tears.
Oh yeah.
And brain bleeds and all this other. So yeah, I'm looking for that. I'm listening for things like, is the memory or word finding because they're distracted? Or memory word finding problems because there's actually something going on physically in there. So you gotta, and again, because the VA was so bent on this idea that if you were not knocked unconscious, you could not have a TBI. Made no sense to me, because if you're telling me that your eyes keep going back and forth after you've done, fired up a couple of rounds, I'm like, well, that seems also pretty obvious.
It's a physical symptom.
There's a physical, and you can have both.
Yeah.
And sometimes the VA would say, well, it's one or the other, and we're not able to differentiate. I was like, well, of course you can differentiate. You just have to know how to do it. And so you get now you've got polydiagnosis, polypharmacy, because the polypharmacy is now treating all of these multiple psychiatric diagnoses that you're carrying around. So then guys come in and say, I am so messed up. I got 5 different psychiatric diagnoses. I can't be more messed up than I already. 5. How sick am I? Look at all the medicine. How sick am I? I was like, well, so here again, how do you build trust? Like, you're not that sick.
It's a belief. They now have a belief that they have an overwhelming problem that's insurmountable, right?
And now they're hopeless.
Hopeless is
Really,
it's
really
huge,
hopeless. So
huge.
it's like, no, really, a couple of things. One is you got one problem. Maybe there's a TBI. Well, it's PTSD. It cuts across everything you're talking about. We got to get you off these medicines to kind of get a clearer picture. But now I want you to start thinking, you are not mentally ill. You've got a brain injury. PTSD is an injury. It's not a mental illness. It's the only psychiatric diagnosis that we have that requires exposure to something. Criteria A. If you don't meet criteria A, exposure to something traumatic, you can have all 20 symptoms. You cannot have a diagnosis of PTSD. So in my view, it's like, oh, as soon as I can't tell you how many guys and spouses broke down crying in my office when I'd say, you're not mentally ill. This is an injury. We got to rehab this. And when they finally hear, I'm not sick, I'm not, because who wants to be mentally ill? Especially coming out of the service where you want to be strong, tough. And now they're telling you you're just way more messed up, beyond repair. So these messages are like, the biggest one is like, we can fix this. And and for a lot of people, they've never heard anybody say, we can fix this. They've said, we got to control your anger.
Yeah.
We got to control your rage. We got to control this. I was like, no, you not control it. You got to stop it. So the goal is, like I said, go anywhere you want, whenever you want comfortably. The goal is elimination of symptoms, not control. The medications that the guys are being prescribed is to control their emotional reaction to all of the various triggers in their lives. So the SSRIs, for instance, the SSRIs are approved for treatment of PTSD, but they don't work. No medicines work to treat PTSD. All they do is they work to minimize the symptoms.
It's putting a mask on.
It's a splint. I refer to it like a splint. So if you think about, a splint you put on your finger. So you're trying to not get volatile, trying not to get depressed. But what that also means then is you can't get happy either.
Yep,
That's
you're
right.
numb. You're numb.
Right.
We call it zombie dope. We call it VA zombie dope as a joke because so many of our friends and we've experienced it ourselves. But you basically get completely numbed out to where you're not experiencing any highs or any lows. So what's the point? Then you're just like, I'm just floating along here.
Right. So you can't interact well with your kids, with your spouse. Then the other part is, a lot of people do come to see me, not just veterans, because they want to get off their SSRIs. If you're emotionally numb, if you're splinted, and you can't actually experience joy, and you can't get an erection, here's another insult. Not only do I feel weak in my character, I can't have sex with my wife.
And absolutely, in the data we have, Larry, says that, and this is the work that Mr. Derek Blumke, that leads our Work Life Change Initiative, the data that he has on that, and what we talk about a lot, is that with these SSRIs, 50% of that population is going to experience either temporary or permanent sexual dysfunction as one of the side effects of that class of medication. How heavy does that weigh on your mind as a practitioner when you're considering giving folks those kinds of meds? And how does the element of informed consent play into that? Because that's, right now there's legislation in the Congress that we're supporting and trying to get traction on that's being resisted that is on informed consent, which frankly is the law, just the VA doesn't follow it because they don't want to discourage people from engaging with their meds.
Well, so first, I'm a psychologist. I cannot prescribe anything, right? So, I can say, look, this is my experience. This is what I've seen clinically. So my experience is like roughly 1/3 of the people who take, I think the research basically suggests roughly 1/3 of people who take SSRIs or any really SSRIs, 1/3 will get really great results with no side effects. I don't see those people, right? They don't have any reason to come to see me. Another third will have some benefit with side effects, and some will get no benefit with side effects.
Mm.
So it's all those people who are getting marginal relief with side effects. My experience has been that as people, and I will work with people on a protocol to help them along with their doctor to taper off. And you'd be surprised at how many doctors don't know how to taper.
No, we're not surprised.
We're very well aware of that.
Our whole veteran population, anytime they go in and start talking to their doctor about trying to get off of their SSRIs or some of these psychotropic medications, they're pretty much met with, nobody knows how to do that.
But they do. There are people who know how to do it and know how to do it successfully. But I've also heard psychiatrists say, not only am I not going to help you, I never recommend. They'll say,
Yes,
I never
yes.
recommend that you come up. And here's the other thing about psychiatry. Look, I have psychiatry friends, so I'm not bashing. They do a lot of great work. But, you were saying about something about informed consent. It's one thing saying, here, this is going to help you. But the informed consent part is, but if you want to ever get off of this, it's going to be a bear.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be really, really hard. So is it really informed consent when you say, take this, maybe it'll help, but you also don't say, if you try to get off of it at some point, you're going to have a real problem.
Yeah, if someone had shared the truth with me, I would have thought twice about
Right.
taking all these medications, and I don't know what permanent damage or what permanent
Right.
Things may have occurred while I was on them. Right.
Right. And so, with regards to the medications, like I said, I can't recommend it, but people do come to see me to say, I don't want to be on these medicines. And I've actually had people come to me and say, I'm really depressed. They'll tell me their depression symptoms. And I'm not talking about combat, but with regards to medication. And they'll tell me, it's like, yeah, I'm really flat. I can't enjoy anything. I used to be able to. And I was like, how's your sex life? I haven't had sex in a year. Well, you know what? It sounds like really what you're talking about is not depression, but a side effect.
So, yeah.
And so you go back to your doctor. You don't need to see me.
But and so let's pick up on that, because this is another very common element of the story that we engage and tell all the time, and kind of how that plays out from the VA side, at least in our experience, and what we cover, is you go in, you bring that up, and they say, "Ooh, your disease is progressing. We need to up your dosage, we need to dial it in with a different med, and you get a whole new suit of problems."
We need to give you a medication that gives you erections. That'll solve.
Yes, because your vitamin Viagra is low in your body,
Yeah.
and we need to elevate it.
I've got a good story. This is personal. So they put me on Prozac and Xanax, and then I was like, I'm so lethargic. And I go in and I'm telling them, and they're like, all right, well, we got to test your testosterone. So they find out I've got these ridiculously low testosterone levels, and they're like, okay, so we need to put you on testosterone. So they put me on testosterone injection therapy. So I'm on that one. And then I come in, and my wife and I are trying to conceive, and we're not able to conceive. And I come in and I'm like, hey, we have fertility issues. And they're like, oh, we're going to have to do all these fertility treatments. And then I started kind of thinking about and unwinding all these things that occurred. And I ended up finding out that it was the SSRIs lowered my testosterone, and then it was the testosterone therapy cut off my production. So it was just like this, cascading disaster that was back to me needing to get into my trauma and work on addressing those emotions and releasing them. And that's where I kind of started getting into the plant ideas and the thoughts of working with plants to help me get past these subconscious blocks that I had, where my conscious mind was just running in circles with all these, different parts of me or voices or whatever, and they were just not allowing me to really dig into some of these really dense feelings that I had. Right. When you watched the film In Waves and War on Netflix, tell me what parts of that, seem to be like either the most fascinating, or you were like, absolutely, that is what I see in my practice.
Before I saw it, I'd actually sent a couple of veterans.
Wow, fantastic.
Down to Ambio, which was where this.
Wow.
Yeah.
What kind of results did you?
It's freaking unbelievable.
Wow.
Someone going from one guy, the day before he was supposed to go, was trying to unlock his gun safe. His wife had changed the combination. and he was trying to get into the gun safe unsuccessfully. And went there, came back, and it was like a 180. And I'd been working with this guy for a long time. The PTSD was actually pretty good. The moral injury wasn't. And so my experience has been that I can do pretty good work with PTSD symptom-wise. And for some people, so well that they'll no longer meet criteria for PTSD without plant medicine.
Wow.
But what I've never been able to figure out is how do you address moral injury from a psychotherapy perspective? And that's always been tough. So what I've found is specifically things like ayahuasca and ibogaine, 5-MeO, are much better at addressing moral injury than I could ever do, and certainly any other pharmaceutical.
Is that because there's more of a spiritual aspect to it? Or I don't know what you even call that, right? That it's like a soul level fragmentation where you feel like you're out of sync with the universe. You know what I mean? Like there's just something that's almost, it's deeply subconscious.
In the psychedelic research community, that's an open question. What's actually causing the repair? Is it spiritual? Maybe. Psychological? Maybe. Is it neurological? Possibly. Imperial College did a study a couple of years ago at Tendaveda retreats in Mexico that specializes in 5-MeO DMT. And they were looking at high density EEG, people under 5-MeO.
Whoa.
And what they found was that there was almost a complete total collapse of all of the traditional circuits.
Like the fight or flight?
No, the whole brain.
Whoa.
No, the whole brain.
Whoa.
And so here's the other thing. People talk about, the default mode network and the salience network. What another thing of looking at is like, well, how is it that there's just targeting one particular part of the brain? And what I think Imperial found was on 5, there was a wholesale reboot, like all of the traditional circuits, whether it's a default mode network or the salience network or any other, just a complete collapse reconstituted. So is it like literally literal brain reboot? And now we're saying, well, no, we just actually rebooted your brain. Is that spiritual or is that physical? Is it psychological? So the debate is still out there. What actually causes people to get better? Why is it that any of these medicines actually are what they refer to transdiagnostic? How is it that mushrooms can help with PTSD, eating disorders, substance abuse, major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder? How is it that one plant or MDMA, or DMT, or any of or LSD, how is it that they can actually work across the board on so many different types of problems that seem to be unrelated? We don't know. We don't know the answer to that. We do know that different medicines have different effects. I think, people don't really talk a lot about ketamine, but if I had somebody who's acutely suicidal, man, ketamine, for a lot of people, boom. For some people, one dose of ketamine, and you're no longer suicidal. And I would love to see more emergency rooms carry ketamine and be able to use it for people who come in with suicidal thoughts. Acute suicidal thoughts, because there is no therapeutic benefit of going into a psychiatric hospital other than to prevent you from killing yourself.
Yeah.
But they're not really therapeutic. So if I can do a ketamine drip for a couple of hours while you're in the emergency department and then send you home and go see this therapist, that's much more therapeutic.
Yeah, you're empowering somebody versus like I'm going to institutionalize you and put you on these things against your will.
Yeah, and you're giving them the mental space, because if you're chronically thinking about killing yourself, why are you thinking about getting better? Right? Because your hope is you're thinking, I can't get better. That's why I want to kill myself. So if you take that away, it opens up the headspace to actually think, okay, I'm not feeling so, well, that's weird. I'm not having those thoughts anymore. So ketamine, great for that kind of acute relief from suicidal thoughts. But, the different medicines work, differently for different people.
Right.
So, we're talking about plant medicine and how like I would integrate it. So I came to the plant medicine part back during COVID, 2021. I had a cardiac arrest. I died.
Wow.
3rd degree heart block. And I was only told later that most people never survive that.
Wow.
Twice. I was lucky that the EMT, when I said, my doctor's out west, he's like, you'll never make it. We can't take you there. Like, so they took me right around the corner to hospital right down the street. They were waiting for me 4:30 in the morning. My wife could not come with me because it's COVID.
Right.
Right.
And doctors, I'm like, what? It's like, what's going on? It's like, you've got a heart block. I'm like, how's that possible? I had bypass surgery a couple of years ago. It's like, no, that's the plumbing. This is the electrical. And so while I was in the emergency department, I coded twice.
Ooh.
Wow.
Do you remember anything from that? Did you have a near-death experience, or was it just
Here's what
asleep?
I had always, and this is again like a personal philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought that people are just very, very, for lack of a better expression, egocentric to think that we're that much different than a squirrel or any other animal. That when we die, we're done, and that was just kind of how I always thought about it. So I remember waking up. What I actually remember hearing was, and I remember thinking, what the hell is that noise? And I open my eyes, and there's this big guy with a beard standing over me, giving me chest compressions. And I remember thinking, oh, that's me making that noise.
Ooh, that's not a good way to wake up.
And so I looked
Or
at
is
the
it?
I looked at the doctor. I looked at the doctor. Am I allowed to swear here?
Yeah,
Yeah,
of course.
yeah.
I looked
sure.
at the doctor. I'm like, the fuck was that? He said, you died. I'm like, what do you mean I died? He's like, well, your heart stopped. But we got this thing. We're going to put it in. And then he's like, we're about to put it in again. And I'm like, I don't feel. That was it. And then I hear the noise again. I'm like, okay, now I know that's me. Do you know who the president is? Do you know your name? Do you know where you are? And then I'm laying there, all this is done, and then I remember laying there, I was like, oh, that was weird. What's going on? Oh, and I say to the nurse, if my wife calls, do not tell her what just happened. Do not tell her. And then there's a shift change. Nurse comes in, I called your wife. I'm like, shoot. I didn't want her to know. But so the next part is I'm laying there while they're getting ready for put me in a room. And this young woman comes in, EMT, and literally her hands are clasped, like in prayer. And she walks over quietly, and she's looking with a smile on her face. And she leans in, and she goes, I heard you died. And I was like, yeah, apparently. And then she's like, and?
She wanted to know.
She wanted, and I was like, nothing. It was dark. And of everything, that is the one thing that I will always regret is not having the wherewithal to say, you know what? She just wanted hope. She wanted to know that there was something good at the end. And had I had the wherewithal to actually have my wits, I would have given it to her.
No, you were honest. You were honest. But
so from that, I was like, okay, I'm seeing at that point, working at the clinic, seeing veterans, I'm seeing 50, 55 people a week. For a psychologist, that's a lot of patient hours. 30 is usual, 50 to 55, and most of them are veterans. So I come out and I'm like, all right, something's got to give. Something's got to change. I got to do something about what I'm doing here. Then I signed up for this trauma conference. And shortly after, and the keynote speaker is Robin Carhart Harris, leader in psychedelic medicine.
wow.
I had no idea. He's giving the keynote address, and he's talking about psychedelics treating trauma. And I'm like, what the hell is this about? What rock have I been under? That I had no idea that they were doing this.
Mm.
And that's when I'm like, that's what's going to be different. I'm going to learn how to do this. Because now I can get these people, veterans, I can get them better, faster, easier, better duration. I'm in.
Fantastic.
So I went to get specialized training. I went to Integrative Psychiatry Institute out in Boulder. And their inaugural class did the 250 hours of training in psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy.
Yeah, so you're like an OG, man.
I am an OG.
Yeah.
But I had to leave the clinic because I knew the clinic wasn't going to let me work with psychedelics. So I went to private practice. So my practice is quantum behavioral. So I teach at WashU, but I am full-time private practice. I teach and consult in the psychedelic research program at WashU, but I'm in private practice.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned this, and I'm like learning all the stuff, and learning about the medicine, getting experiences myself with the medicine, and then I'm thinking, okay, this is it. So I connected with a group that was doing ayahuasca retreats domestically, because a lot of guys don't want to leave the country. A lot of guys can't leave the country for legal reasons.
That's right.
In Malibu, of all places, because someone was willing to donate their mansion to have these ayahuasca retreats in Malibu, and I connected with these people and made some more connections through there. And so I really started thinking more about my own experiences with the medicines, starting out with microdosing. And so my first, besides referring people for ayahuasca, then I started talking to people about microdosing. And what I found is, like right now, every veteran that I've seen over the last year and a half, 2 years, every one of them, unless they have some kind of security clearance, every one of them is microdosing or has been microdosing.
And what are the effects? What are the benefits?
Okay, so it's weird. Okay, so my practice when I work with veterans is, again, based on what the VA wasn't doing, what I thought was making the problem worse. So when you think about the way the VA does treatment, you're going to come in, what's their first, besides the medicine, first order of business, prolonged exposure. Tell me all about it. Sit in my office, and you're going to go through all the details, and I'll flick the lights on, I'm going to bang on the table, and then the guy's like, what the hell was that? And they go home, and it's worse. And the VA's own research says 87% of the people who start prolonged exposure drop out before it's over. But that's still the VA's primary psychological intervention.
What is going on?
Then guys are saying, and then I did EMDR, also approved. And some guys are saying that was even worse than the original trauma. So, and I'm like thinking, okay, so how is this working? And I'm thinking about their lifestyle. What are they doing here? So developed this protocol. I talked about a long time ago that there are certain concepts. And I'll get into how this gets into the plants. First, PTSD is not a mental illness. It's an injury that requires rehab. First one. Now we have to say, all right, look, you've got this warrior mentality. Basic training, you get deployed, you learn how to protect yourself and those around you. And it was adaptive at the time. But you're taking this warrior mentality and you're bringing it into your civilian life, and that what was adaptive is now maladaptive.
Mm-hmm.
The next part is you're treating your house like a fob. So, you can be on a fob, you can get a little bit of rest, you can shower, eat, but you're never really completely relaxed. You know that guys are looking out for you, but you're always alert. You go home, you focus on the front door. Even though most people are going to come in through the back, you focus on the front door. Check the locks, you check the windows, maybe you set up security cameras. You set up a chair in your living room so that you're posting up so you can see the front door, you can see the hallway, you can see the window. Clearing space. I'm not going to let my kids sit on my lap because what if I have to jump up? I don't want to toss them across the room. I'm not going to let my wife, sit next to me on my right side because I need access to my right hand just in case, even though I don't have a weapon. I need access. So you look at, okay, so you think about the fob. We're going to work behaviorally. Because if you can't be comfortable in your own house, the idea that you're going to be comfortable anywhere else makes zero sense. So then treatment starts at home, not in an office. It starts at home.
Yeah, and actually, that's a great way to end this segment because you're going to do a deep dive podcast with Will on this protocol.
Yeah.
So I think this is fantastic for you to really suss this out.
Oh, absolutely. I'm fascinated.
Dig in deep to all the steps of this protocol because Larry's been immersing himself in this problem further than all of us see the patterns within the veteran community, but he's been immersing himself in this from a provider standpoint.
Yeah,
and that
which is super unusual.
Yeah, it is super unusual and unique. Your objective perspective and ability to humble yourself and get curious, even though the industry and the governing bodies and the systems at play have said this is the way of success is to do these things. It seems like multiple times in your life you've been able to step out of that and see all these systems at play and go, well, I'm going to get humble and curious and see what really works, instead of feeding the ego, right? So I can't wait till this Grunt Style Foundation podcast drops.
Yeah, everybody stay tuned to our social media, because as soon as we get that loaded and dropped out, we'll make everybody know, and we'll definitely get down into the meat of kind of the mechanics of how some of this stuff is working.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to know, how is there a movement going on in your field where more and more folks are becoming more like-minded to your approach at dealing with these types of issues with our veterans?
I think what Will's saying is, can you take over?
No, well, look, no one's offered me the job. No one's offered me the job. Look, I would say, Will, to that question, are things changing in the profession? No. And here's the thing about it. As the major combat operations have wound down, and people at the VA have cycled through, a lot of the younger providers have no clue. They were born after 9/11.
Yeah.
A lot of them, they don't really understand. They're seeing fewer and fewer combat veterans. And they're not actually, I think it's incumbent upon the VA to say, hey, if you're going to work with veterans, I want you to read about combat trauma, veteran experience. I had one veteran say he was a special operator.
Mm-hmm.
And he was telling this younger clinician, therapist, these are the things I did. And her response was, you're allowed to do that? So for you to be able to say, to question an operator, say you're allowed to do that, it's like, well, pretty much, yeah, but you should know that.
Totally. Which reminds me to plug the new documentary that I was just watching last night on Netflix called Marines. Very generic, very easy to find on Netflix, but it does a better job than any film I've ever seen showing the mindset of the military. And when you're watching it, they do these deep dives into all these different Marines' lives and Navy personnel that are deployed together. And you're able to see the pattern that emerges time and time again, which is not a good family upbringing, seeking a tribe, seeking a new family, being a part of a very intense tribe, a very intense family where you play a valuable role within that, and then trying to find your place afterward, right? And I think everybody that works with military nonprofits, everybody that works in military nonprofits should go watch this documentary on Netflix. It's just called Marines. And I think it does a great job of telling the story of every branch, but it just goes to this psychological level that I have never seen a show do on active duty troops. It's really, really, really good. But
is it just Marines? In Navy, you said?
Marines and Navy are deployed together.
Okay.
It's a joint operation, and it's not combat. But even without combat, it shows the intensity of everything they're all going through.
Yeah.
And it makes you realize, like, oh, combat is an important aspect, but if you watch it, you're like, it doesn't even, there's a lot going on. You know what I mean? So, but anyway, thank you so much for coming on the live stream today.
No, this was great.
Yeah, we want to have you back for sure. We're definitely going to have you back. And I want to make sure that before we jump off, we plug the upcoming Irreverent Warriors events. Of course, all of you in the leadership team, you're all going to be with me at Combat Outpost IW coming up soon. That's where we literally recreate a combat outpost, and we all go to it, and we get out in nature, and all of the Irreverent Warriors leadership go to this retreat, and we do classes, holistic modalities, a lot of different things to get prepared for the next year. And we also have a huge hike coming up in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and Puerto Rico. So if you want to go hang out on a beach, if you want to get in the sun, get yourself down to Puerto Rico, get yourself down to Fort Lauderdale. You can go to irreverentwarriors.org to check out all of our events, and we're going to have probably 65 major events over the next year. So
here we go.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much.
Thanks for
Dr.
having
Shapiro.
me.
Yep.
Hopefully it was helpful.
It was super helpful. And again, we're going to dig into this more in our podcast. Come. In the meantime, to leave the audience, if someone is wanting to get a hold of you, maybe they want to send their doctor over to you to consult and pick your brain or something like that. I don't know what's acceptable there, but how would somebody get in touch with you or find your practice?
The best way to find me, first of the practice is quantum behavioral. So you can just type in my name, Google my name, Larry Shapiro. You can find me on Psychology Today, my website, quantumbehavioral.com, and Psychedelic Support. I have profiles on all of those, and if you just go there, they all have links to me directly. Probably the easiest. And also, if you go there, you actually get a better sense of, okay, so we're talking here, but read up a little bit more.
Sure.
Right? You want to be an educated consumer.
Sure.
Of everything, including psychological care.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Psychology Today, quantumbehavioral.com, Psychedelic Support, really the easiest way to get a hold of me.
Awesome. Right. Well, thank you so much. All right. Thanks everybody for joining us. Have a great weekend. Be aware it is a very intense full moon. So if you see any drama coming your way, just make sure you do the Matrix thing where you...
Yeah, trauma equals drama, baby.
Dodge it.
All right.
Yeah. All right. Now
have a good weekend, everybody. Stay waxy, man.
Love you all. Peace.